Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. This is Arif Rahman coming live to you. Today is 31st of March, I think, 2018, around 4:30 p.m. London time and 11:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Saving Time in America. This, I just have to do a quick sound check. Sound seems to be okay. Today's topic is, as you have already seen on the description of this YouTube video and on the title, is going to be varied. And also we have a guest with us today. On my channel, I don't always do a lot of English based conversations, mostly because I'm originally from Bangladesh, an ex-Muslim atheist. I have a lot of Bengali content. So my YouTube channel, you may see a mix of different language contents. A little bit about me. I am an activist in the freedom of speech, atheism, secularism arena for the last almost 12 years. Originally from Bangladesh, but currently I'm living in the UK. I've been here for almost a decade now. And mostly my activism is based online. I have some offline footprint as well. I have been mentioned and kind of featured in a lot of Islamist hit lists, and that's how people kind of know me, because most of my original activism was in Bengali, and because Bengali does not translate very well in English, at least not before. The Islamists in Bangladesh somehow connected themselves to Pakistani Islamists and ISIS and other places, the global Ummah, got hold of my name and as well as a few of my other colleagues' names, and that's how people got to know me. But that's not who I am. I am predominantly a proponent of freedom of speech and scientific thinking, logical thinking, and against the purpose of religion in political and social life. Obviously, there are logic behind why religion should stay and what is the use and everything. So we try to debate with people. Today, our discussion is not directly about religion, but kind of ancillary topics that are influenced by religion. And we have Abdullah Sameer with us, who we're going to introduce you in a short while. A lot of you already know him. He's got a really good YouTube channel already. And I can see that his videos are very popular. And I can see that he tries to explore different areas of religion and how we should, try to understand from a different aspect. He was a I think my link went down quickly. He was grown up, or he was brought up as a Muslim, but at some point he realized that Islam is kind of having issues, and he became an ex-Muslim. I think I have just lost my colleague quickly, so I'm just gonna make a quick call to him. And apologies for this delay. It's possible that somebody may have hacked our conversation today, because we do get a lot of attacks from different, our enemies or frenemies. I can see that Beej Price has just said greetings, and he said tweeted it. He or she, I don't know the name or the gender, so tweeted it out saying thank you so much for that. But I have a feeling that my link to Sameer is not happening. So I'm going to go and try to call him again. We'll be back in a short second. I'm trying to call Sameer again on his our discussion usually happens on Skype, and it looks like it's not connecting on his end. So we were talking a second ago, and looks like it's not happening anymore. That's a bit awkward. So our discussion, the contents that we were going to talk about, and hopefully I will get him back shortly, was about there are three different topics we wanted to cover today. One was obviously the identity politics with Muslims, and I think we have Sameer back with us. Can you hear me? Good, that's great. So we just got him back. That means we are back on track. So without further ado, I don't know how long we'll stay connected, but we are introducing Sameer. Hello, Sameer. We can see you now.
Hi. How is it going?
Yeah, it's great. So I was just kind of trying to introduce people to the topics that we were going to talk about. But before we do that, now that we are back on track, and sorry about the mishap earlier, do you want to kind of give us a bit of an intro about yourself? I know you have a really nice blog and a YouTube channel as well, but brief summary of your life and what made you an ex-Muslim. Do you want to kind of go over that?
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up with one parent was an Ismaili Muslim, and one was a Sunni Muslim. So my dad was an Ismaili Muslim. So I had been exposed to kind of two different sects of Islam, but I was actually an Ismaili Muslim. Came to Canada from Kenya when I was 8 years old, so I was quite young. And lo and behold, in public school here in Canada, I became friends with a bunch of Sunni Muslims, and I decided to start reading the Quran. I started going to the Friday prayers they had in the school, and I decided to become Sunni Muslim. So I converted to Sunni Islam, and I started praying 5 times a day. I started doing the whole thing. I read the Quran cover to cover in English, I think once or twice, a translation, Yusuf Ali, and then I got another one, Sahih International. I bought the books of Hadith, Bukhari, and the summarized one. I read it cover to cover as well. I was very excited. I said, you know what? I want to follow what God wants me to follow, and I want to be, I want to do what's best in this world, right? And since we have the book from Allah, from God, I mean, what better thing to do than to follow this book? So I became quite religious. I started going to Islamic events. My friends would take me to conferences. And this was all around the age of, you can say 18, I guess, around 18 or so. And so for the next, pretty much from 18 until I left Islam 3 years ago, I was what you would call a religious practicing Muslim. I spent my energy and my time however I could to promote the values of Islam. So what I did was I used to go to different events. I bought some video camera equipment. I started videotaping lectures, and I created my own website called Light Upon Light. So lightuponlight.com. And what I did was I created a free video streaming website much before YouTube existed. So people told me, no, you can't do it. It's going to be too expensive. But I'm like, no, I believe I can do this if I put my mind to it. So I found a way. I found a way to finance it, and I got the videos up there for people to watch. Excuse me. I think by now there's been over like 1 million downloads on that website. Another big website which I created, which was highly successful, was verse-by-verse-Quran.com. This was a website that I created to help people to create Quran streaming apps. So to actually help people create their own Quran websites. So Tanzil and different Quran websites, they have like, Quran that's, streaming. So I created this project that was extremely successful. We basically created a bunch of things that people use. So Quran.com and Tanzil and Quran Explorer, all the big Quran websites used my split recitations to create the websites and make it more popular. At the time when I left Islam, it was getting like, in Ramadan, it was like more than 2,000 people a second were downloading from the website. It was extremely successful. Now, the question is, after putting so much time and energy and effort into Islam, why did I leave Islam? Like, what happened, right? And well, what happened is I started to have doubts that the religion that I accepted without being much too critical actually was not from God, and it was actually the invention of Muhammad. So what happened was, I started to become a lot more scientifically literate. I started to do, as I was growing as an individual, one of my weaknesses was I was lacking in scientific understanding of the world. So some of the red flags that I noticed weren't so obvious to me back then. And as I started to learn more, I started to see that things in the Quran seem very strangely to be written from the perspective of a man in the 7th century, and they didn't seem to be written from the perspective of a divine creator of the universe. And so I had to confront my fears. Maybe this is not from Allah. So what I did was I started to research as much as I could to find out how is it that, like, people ask me, like, how is it that all this time you didn't look into it? I just never looked into it. You surround yourself by everything that reinforces your faith, and you just don't question it, right? If anything comes in your mind, you kind of find a way out of it.
Yeah,
you make excuses.
They call it the so-called they call it the so-called echo chambers.
Echo chambers, and also cognitive dissonance, right? So where you're able to hold kind of two conflicting things in your mind at the same time. So that's what happened to me. But it wasn't for very long, because once I realized that there's a problem and these two things were conflicting in my mind, one was saying that, it seems that this is actually from the perspective of a 7th century man, and the information in the Quran is limited. So I started to look into every single thing that I believed about the Quran. One by one, they all fell down. Like every single, challenge that the Quran brought, I found that there was a response to it, and a convincing response. And then so I asked myself, is there any reason to believe that this is from Allah? Like what's left, right? And I started to ask people, okay, well, let's go back to the beginning. Never mind the mistakes in the Quran. Like, why should I even believe in the first place? And I found there wasn't a convincing answer other than linguistic miracle. And like, what does that even mean? Like, and how am I supposed to verify that, being someone in the 21st century that doesn't speak Arabic? How am I supposed to verify that? And I couldn't find any solid basis for my faith. So I left Islam. Eventually I created the blog, and then I created the videos. So the videos started 2 years ago. And that's basically my story in a nutshell.
I should have said, "MashaAllah, brother, what a wonderful life." I felt like it, but thanks for that. And I was just I don't know if you could see, but I was showing the viewers your blog as well as your YouTube channel while you were talking about it. And this is interesting because obviously the world is full of so many Muslims these days, and
yes,
I'm sure a lot of them are intellectually capable of actually coming through the darkness and come to the other side, or the so-called dark side, and see the real light that you have seen. And the method that I think inadvertently applied to you is you understood how the real world works, how the scientific system actually works, and how the narrative presented in Quran and also in other religious scriptures and the colloquial the orated history and life of Muhammad and Islam is full of really old kind of mummified stuff. It's not real and it's not recent, and it doesn't explain the world that we live in these days. It tries to explain some unexplainable, which science is still trying to work out, but they already have an answer. And you, the moment you started seeing through that, your head automatically, naturally started seeing the problems and moved you to the other side. And I think a lot of intellectual Muslims can actually overcome the burden they have been given by their family, by their society, and by the systematic brainwashing that is a curse on a life of a Muslim. And recently we have seen how why suddenly in the past, say 20 to 30 or 40 years, how the growth of Muslims in the world and their worldview, which is not really, cooperating or mixing with the current modern secular views of this world. And I don't know if I'm able to actually explain, but I'm just trying to say that the Muslims that used to be, say, 40 years ago in the world, for example, Middle East and South Asia, where the majority Muslim countries are, people used to be modern. There was no sign of them actually externally being very Muslim or Islamic. But over the 40 years, the history of Muslims seems to have declined, and they have become more and more into this very narrow-focused Wahhabi type thing. And on the topic of Wahhabism, we recently heard from the recently powerful phenomena that we've seen in Saudi Arabia, that the Wahhabism was actually a Western project, and apparently Saudi Arabia was asked by Roosevelt and few other people to actually spread Islam as a weapon of war, and that's the result we see. For example, in Bangladesh, I'm from Bangladesh, and I have seen devastating consequence of Wahhabism, and I'm sure you have seen the same in other places as well, throughout the West and throughout the Middle East, and how Wahhabism can destroy a whole civilization and can become a curse. So I don't know, I just went into a tangent, and I did warn you that we might go into a tangent middle of it.
Yeah, I do agree with you what you said. I do feel that there's been a much more intolerant strain of Islam that has become very popular due to Saudi funding, and for whatever geopolitical reason, it's become quite dominant in many ways in the world, right? Like, even in my home country of Kenya, there's some masjids that are built from Saudi funding, and of course, when the mosque comes with Saudi money, it also comes with its ideological, funding. I myself ended up as a Salafi, as a Wahhabi, you can say. I mean, I never use the word Wahhabi; I use the word Salafi. But the influence was there. The scholars, the Wahhabi or the Salafi scholars, Bilal Phillips and Yasir Qadhi, and although Yasir Qadhi kind of distanced himself from that title now, from that label. But yeah, like, I ended up going to Al-Maghrib, which was basically a Salafi teaching institute in Canada that's become very popular with the Canadian youth. There's a mosque called Al-Huda, which is, again, a women's mosque here in Canada. In Toronto, there's one. There's all over the world. And it's, again, very, very popular amongst women. And so what you're finding is you're finding young women in the 20s and 30s here in Canada. They're wearing the niqab. They're voluntarily putting on niqab. They're isolating themselves from society. It's because of this movement that's going on. And it's happening among young people. That's the thing, right? It's a crazy thing. Like me, I was a young guy. I became so religious. My family, my parents are not religious at all, right? They're very moderate, very secular, right? And they're very integrated in society, whereas I kind of like became this like very religious guy. Same with some of my brother became very religious as well, and he still is. So yeah, there's definitely this intolerant strain of Islam, which it's very hardline. Don't wish Merry Christmas and Happy New Year and stuff like that. Don't, it's shirk. Everything is shirk. Everything is bid'ah. Music is haram. Although music is haram is pretty much, all across Sunnism, I would say. But yeah, this is unfortunate. Like, this is a strain that's become popular. Whereas the Sufi strain of Islam used to be a little bit more tolerant, I feel. But I do have some hope. I have seen that there's a little bit of reform happening, and some people are actually reconsidering some of these things. So.
Sorry, your audio just cut off.
Can you not hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Sorry, I thought.
Okay. Yeah, no. So I do. Go ahead. Yeah.
Just to interrupt you there, I can see that people are actually commenting on the YouTube stream that we have, and people are asking that can we ask questions, and I do welcome questions, and I'm just keeping an eye on it. And somebody was suddenly asking that, what are we talking about this Saudi Arabia influence? So I just posted a link to a British filmmaker made video that was aired in BBC some time ago, and it was about how the actual history of how Islamization started around 19 after the World War, and Roosevelt met the Saudi king actually, in a warship somewhere in Middle East, and he asked Saudi Arabia to, give oil in cheap price, like a deal, and the Saudis said, yes, we will give you oil, but do not interfere with our religious business. That is the deal they made, and apparently Americans have been keeping their end of the bargain by not actually doing anything about this spread of Saudi Wahhabism and Salafism. So I just put the link in the stream, and then if anybody is interested, please go ahead, and it's like a 1.5 hour video, but obviously don't start watching it now because you're going to miss our discussion. So going back to the topic that we actually kind of selected for our discussion today is the first topic is identity politics, and specifically with Muslims, and mostly in the Western Hemisphere. So, for example, in Europe, in America, I have personally seen, obviously, my concern is a lot of people may not be able to actually relate to that because I am a kind of an exception, because I moved here around when I was 24, and I come from a family background which is not 100% religious, but kind of semi-religious. But then I'm almost like you. I saw the scientific way of thinking how the world works, and became aware of what problems of Islam is. And then we have, obviously, I read some books, and I got in touch with a few of the fellow atheists, and I should say extreme atheists, or for example Richard Dawkins, and people like them. They obviously influenced us a lot, but not a lot of people from from South Asia or Middle East would be like me. But my concern is when people like us, the immigrants, who, and not only the first generation, but the second and third generation, who actually was born and brought up here, but they still live within this bubble, which is, they call it cultural, but it's actually a religious bubble, and they try to identify themselves as Muslims, whereas Pakistanis, Bangladeshi, Indian, Somalian, Nigerian, anybody coming from different ethnic background would still be classed as and seen as Muslims, regardless of their actual religious values and religious beliefs. And that, I think, is a problematic thing, because there are a few other problems are based on that, and I have a feeling that I just saw a quick comment, but quick note for Sameer, I can't actually answer any of your comments on the Skype, because my framing would be go highway. So
okay, no problem. Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna kind of summarizing that, and based on that created identity of ethnic background people or migrants, and then putting them into a big bucket called Muslims, and then later on building a lot of other narratives on top of it. For example, the word Islamophobia generally, theoretically, should have been people hating other colored people, but somehow it became a religious thing. It's almost like people hating Muslims. But then again, if you are Sikh, which is not a Muslim, if you are Hindu, but you still look like a brownish person, because South Indians mostly are like me, brown, they are still seen as Muslims, and that's a big major problem. And there are other identity politics surrounds that. Obviously, the word identity politics or the phrase identity politics can be used and are used in different aspects. But that is my take on it. I would kind of bring the microphone to you now.
Sure. Yeah. So just quickly before I jump into that, someone was asking why I left Islam. I think if you have time, just check out the blog after, because we're not really going to get into that today, why I left Islam. But you can say in a nutshell, it's because the Quran didn't prove itself that it's from Allah. Right? It didn't give sufficient evidence. And it gives a lot of evidence that it's not from Allah. Now, to your question about identity politics,
Before you
about
jump there, I'm just gonna kind of mention that I just posted Sameer's blog in the
thanks.
stream. So if anybody is interested that you just referred to, please go to that page, and you'll be able to kind of understand everything. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. So as for the, we were going to discuss the ex-Muslim label, using the title ex-Muslim. And a friend of mine who I look up to a lot, his moniker is Reason on Faith. So he has a blog, reasononfaith.org, and he talks about the need for the ex-Muslim label. In fact, many people didn't use this label until, ex-Muslims of North America became like a big thing. And the reason for the label is because, like, people don't know that you can leave Islam. Like you said, everybody just assumes, oh, you're just Muslim, right? And especially in certain parts of the world, it's very difficult, politically speaking, culturally speaking, religiously speaking. It's extremely difficult, dangerous, and detrimental to your personal well-being to leave Islam. So people can't really speak out. So this is kind of, again, it's a bit of identity politics. It's a way of identifying that, we are basically not Muslim anymore. We've left Islam. We have a unique experience that's different from just like an atheist, right? Someone that just calls himself atheist. We have this cultural, traditions, and we have this cultural heritage, and we have this common, you can say, values and, beliefs that we used to have, and some of them we still hold on to, right? Like one of the things I still do even after leaving Islam is I still wash my ass, right, with water. I couldn't stop doing that. That was something I felt was good, right? And so we're not limited to, you don't have to just leave everything, right? I mean, human beings, we learn from each other, we take the good and we leave the bad. So recently I kind of personally decided not to use the ex-Muslim label, at least not on I don't post it on my social media. So I don't have it on my Twitter, I don't have it on my Facebook anymore, ex-Muslim or a secular humanist or even atheist. I don't put that anymore. And labels are actually useful because they provide a lot of information about someone very quickly, right? Like if someone says, I'm vegan or I'm atheist, for example, you immediately know that, oh, this guy, he doesn't believe in a God. His worldview wouldn't be colored by religious doctrine, right? It gives you a lot of information very quickly, which is why we use labels. It was just a very personal thing for me. I decided, even though I totally agree with the label, and if someone asks me, I'll still tell them I'm ex-Muslim. I just don't
I just realized, sorry to interrupt you. I just realized the topic that you are talking about right now was actually number 3 in our item.
Is it?
You just jumped to that thing. We were talking about, my initial thought was about the identity politics of Muslims, as in why brown people or even black peoples are also, rather than calling them, for example, African or African American, if the moment the person becomes Muslim, he's classed as a Muslim, other than his ethnic and other identity. That was my initial thought process. The ex-Muslim thing was actually very very far off.
Right. So yeah, I think that's just maybe that's just the way people see the world. They just want to be able to box people into groups, and so they assume that, oh yeah, everyone's Muslim. After 9/11, some Sikh people got shot. People with turbans, they thought, oh, these guys have turbans and Muslim. They didn't even realize that, like, the one kind of obvious giveaway, which was the turban that Sikhs wear, they didn't realize that these are not Muslims. But some people can't be bothered, I guess, to find out more than that, or to look into it in more detail. Maybe that's what it is.
This is the thing. I mean, I don't know how much I was able to actually explain earlier that my issue is why the system, as in, for example, the governments themselves, the media, why somebody's complaining about sound. Is it Kowan Yo is saying sound kind of low? Is it my sound or Abdullah Sameer's sound? I don't know, but I think we are sounding quite okay for the time being. What I was going to say is why anybody I was talking about the system. Why, for example, the government, the media, everybody would try to class or create a broad brush um, of of one word
Muslims.
to describe
Hmm.
anybody
Yeah,
who is
I
not
haven't.
native white Christian or white. So, um, uh, okay, I can see somebody saying that my sound is bad. Well, I have a feeling that because probably I'm kind of far away from the microphone. How about now? I think it's better now.
No, it
So,
sounds perfect. Yeah, your sound is okay.
it's
I'm not
possible.
too sh
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not too sure about your question, to be honest. I haven't experienced that personally in Canada. I haven't seen anything about like people being, other than like I said, there's some cases where people, some
No,
random.
it's not more of a personal experience. For example, nobody in the street calls me a Muslim, but the
Mhm.
reference that was used, for example, in media to identify people who are not white and not native would be Islam. Sorry, Muslims.
Mhm.
Very few people. If you kind of do a research or do a summary of the number of times words are used to refer people like me, for example, who came from Bangladesh, who's an immigrant, who's not white, obviously, and who's um, who's not from, for example, India, but from Bangladesh, or the identity to identify that people, to class them, people can easily class us as South Asians. I would be
Yeah,
happy.
yeah.
But why they class us as Muslims generally to trying to put me in a very big box where lots of other people are, I don't understand why religious identity has to be used, and other things are based on that. And I think there is a question surrounding that. Somebody wanted to ask you to make a comment about the bill about Islamophobia
Hmm.
in Canada, because the word Islamophobia, I think they try to mention the racism or the fear of immigrants of South Asia as Islamophobia, or their fear of Islam, but they wanted to identify the fear of extremist Muslims. I mean, there are a lot of different specifics that they don't want to use, but they just want to use a broad brush and just say Muslims or Islamophobia. I have a major problem with the word Islamophobia because it's not actually trying to describe what they're trying to describe, if you know what I
Hmm.
mean.
Yeah, yeah. About the so-called bill, I get asked about this a lot. Well, first of all, it's not a bill, it's actually a motion, so it doesn't have any legal standing. Second of all, the reason for the motion was because a bunch of Muslims were like massacred in a mosque in Quebec by this white guy. He came in the mosque and he just like shot up a bunch of people. So the whole point of the motion was to condemn Islamophobia. Now, I have a problem by this MP, this Muslim MP. Now, I have a big problem with like you with the word Islamophobia because it conflates criticism of Islam with anti-Muslim bigotry. I am completely against anti-Muslim bigotry. You know, I do not agree with any sort of bigotry against anybody. I support everybody's right to practice their religion, you know, without imposing it on others. I support everybody's right to pray at the mosque or fast or whatever they want to do, as long as, again, they're not forcing it on others. Right? That's why we have secularism. So whether you're Christian or Jewish or Muslim or not any religion whatsoever, you know, you have every right to not be discriminated against, to live your life, to go to school safely, to not be harassed for your personal belief, your sexuality, your gender. I mean, this is what the United Declaration of Human Rights was all about, right? Like we don't discriminate against people for their personal values or their personal sexuality or whatever it is. So I don't like the word Islamophobia. I think what they meant was anti-Muslim bigotry, because clearly, like if it was against Islamophobia and Islamophobia meant criticism of Islam, then I can go to jail because I'm criticizing Islam. And I think a lot of people got very, very angry at the bill, at the motion, because they thought this is like a slippery slope to losing freedom of expression and freedom of speech. In fact, even Jordan Peterson, the now famous professor in Toronto, he made a video saying, drawing Muhammad, and he made a little happy face cartoon, and he said, "Is this Muhammad? Is this Muhammad?" And he was trying to say, like, we can't stand for fascism. We can't stand for, like, blocking free speech. And because, I mean, the reality is no, and I think a lot of people got very, very angry because they thought that's what this motion was about. It was about freedom of expression and free speech, which I don't think that's what it was about. So I think,
by the way, quick side note about Jordan B. Peterson. Before you glorify him, I have a huge distaste about this person. Just for records.
Okay, so regardless of your personal distaste for this individual, yeah. So what I was saying was, the point is that I think a lot of people, and he was one of them, that jumped on this, that thought this was about being, like, blocking freedom of speech. And a lot of people got very, very angry and became very hostile. And ironically, you have a motion condemning, let's say, bigotry, and this MP, she got death threats. You had people protesting outside of high schools against Islam. And the crazy thing is, most of these people were Christians, actually. The Christian people that are so hostile against Muslims that they were coming and they were protesting outside public schools. Now, I think that was really going too far. I mean, there was some sort of...
Can I pick up on a quick point that you just made? The protest outside schools to protest what? The Islamism, right? Or the extremist views of Islam?
I think it was there was a bunch of things going on, but it was basically anti-Sharia protest, right?
Okay,
it was
so
like,
why a high school? I don't understand. A high school is a public high school, right? Are you talking about a school that is a madrasa type school?
No,
or it's
no,
actually
it was a public.
Why is it outside then? Outside of a school then? Should it not be
really
outside a madrasa or the Salafi? Because that's where these views are actually spread from, not a high school. I don't understand why the protesters were going outside.
I don't know if it was connected to another issue. There was another controversy that happened regarding like allowing Muslims to do the Friday khutbahs inside public schools. So there was a conflict about that too. There was a public hearing. There was just a lot of misinformation going around about Sharia law.
Well,
and it's a lot of
goes back to my original problem or original comment about why our issues with the ideology of Islam is getting mixed up with people, because that's how I mean, if I'm to kind of answer my own question, I have seen this in Bengali blog sphere, I would call it, because around 12 years ago when we started blogging, because we are actually known as bloggers. I mean, you would know Bangladeshi, we have lost so many of our blogger friends. They were killed, literally hacked to death, one after another in Bangladesh. And we are known as bloggers, but we are basically resistance against this. And we have seen that in Bengali, blog sphere, we call it, where we have seen that the moment we try to criticize the issues of extremist Islam, suddenly the whole discussion becomes really, as you said, conflated with people issues. And they hide behind normal Islam believing people. And they say, you guys, us, we are apparently attacking the Muslims. But that's not anything near to what we were doing. We were criticizing the issues and the ideologies of Islam. But then the people who were promoting those ideas suddenly hide behind believers. And the believers obviously don't have the natural faculty to actually distinguish between what we were trying to say or what their beliefs are, and to what extent they should actually defend their own belief and kind of stop when the extremism starts. And I can see that for an observer who's kind of have no idea what these two parties are doing, they get confused between this whole thing. And I think the result, to answer my own comment, is that the Islam, the West and the media and the governments and the systems and the policymakers have got absolutely no clue what us people, the minorities, as you say, people who are atheists or ex-Muslims or who do not actually subscribe to the extremist ideologies, not even the ideologies of Islam, want to try to say. And that's where I think a lot of discussions needs to happen.
Yeah, I think you're right that they do try to hide behind this whole thing of being anti-Muslim. And to be honest, we are actually attacking Muslims in a sense because Muslims do feel offended, right? When you criticize the holy book, they feel angry, right? They're like some of them, right? Some of them are like, yeah, it's free speech, it's free will, you can say whatever you want. Some of them have a chip on their shoulder, they get very angry, they get hostile, they want to attack you. And I think like you've been banned from Facebook so many times now, even though like
Yeah.
you're not like what happened there?
Oh, that's a whole different saga. I was supposed to actually make a long video of describing. I wrote an article in my own blog, which is arif.eu, and you can go and have a look, about how malicious reporting, Facebook's own reporting, are abused to shut down people's voices. And I wrote this when Atheist Republic, the famous platform, um, uh,
It was blocked on Facebook, the page, right? It disappeared,
well,
right?
and it disappeared. So I wrote this article, and it became a kind of a very popular,
Viral.
well-read article. And there, I explained the technical means that the Islamists are using to actually manipulate people's opinion, and also Facebook's own artificial intelligence-based moderation, which is automated moderation. But those are just the tools, and that happens. This is just one tool they use to gag people like
Yeah.
us. I
Yeah.
just couldn't help us notice. Somebody asked me about, Arif, have you ever been confronted in public? I don't know what the question is about, but
Have you been
um,
confronted as like, oh, I know you're an ex-Muslim, or I know you're against Islam or something like that? Like,
I
have you
don't know
ever been like
what.
challenged in
Don't
public?
know what the actual question is. So I would ask Kawanum Yo, the user, to kind of explain a bit more what the actual question is, because that question doesn't make any sense to me at this moment. So I would refrain myself from answering. But besides the point, that's actually we're digressing from our actual topic. In fact, this topic is so vast, and this Facebook ban, and I'm sure everybody has been attacked by this at some point in their life. And recently, Ali Rizvi, who is a Canadian ex-Muslim as well, very well known, they
Hmm.
run this really great podcast called The Secular Jihadists.
Hmm.
And I would recommend everybody to go and kind of subscribe to that really good podcast. Armin Nawabi, and I think Faisal Said Al Muttar and Yasmin, they run this podcast, really good ex-Muslim podcast. So, if you are not subscriber yet, go and subscribe for the audience. Um, so this gagging business of us, as in people who are trying to explain to our fellow ex-Muslims or atheists what is going on. Facebook ban is just one thing that happens, and we have seen, for example, in Bangladesh, the government actually has law against us.
Hmm.
And also, we can't go to the police, because if the Islamists attack us or give us threats that we're gonna hack you
Yeah.
to death, use a machete, and we can't go to the police for support or protection, because police will then ask us, what have you done? And we can't even tell them that we are, atheist, or we have said things that are the reason. And they would say, okay, yes, no problem, we are going to arrest you now. So we are caught between rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
Really bad
Because
situation.
it's yeah, yeah. So yeah, going back to that topic of we are not attacking Muslims, I feel like, we do need to emphasize and continue to emphasize that Muslims are actually not an enemy. We're just, all we want is the same thing you Muslims want, not you Muslims, same thing Muslims want, which is, the freedom to express themselves authentically. All we want is to be accepted for who we are, just like Muslims are accepted. Muslims are actually very lucky. And I grew up in Canada under secularism, and you know what? Honestly, I had every right. I used to go and pray, and inside my office, I would take a break, I would go pray. I wasn't discriminated for, I wasn't openly discriminated against, right? I was hired even despite having a big beard. And, I would tell them I have to go on Friday, I have to do this and that. And I had a good life here in Canada, right? And all we want to bring that same good life for everybody. being an ex-Muslim, you're a minority in a minority, right? You're not, you've come from, especially if you converted to Islam and then you left Islam. When you convert to Islam the first time, you lose a lot of your family. You can, I mean, depending on your family, sometimes they freak out, they kick you out or whatever. And then when you leave Islam, it's like you've lost your new Muslim family, right? So many of us, when we leave Islam, we have to make a whole new set of friends. Some Muslims, unfortunately, it's a very personal thing to them that you're, against Islam, right? And so, like, I had a friend who told me, "Oh, I'm not going to help you move." When I was moving, this was like 3 years ago, and he's like, "Oh," I said, "Why?" And he's like, "Oh, because you have a blog." I'm like, "Oh, okay, it's up to you." Anyways, I hired movers, but it wasn't like I was even asking him for help, but he wanted to let me know that, "Oh, I'm not helping you move." So it becomes very personal for them, right? And so suddenly a lot of people that used to talk to you, they don't want to talk to you anymore. They don't want to reach out to you. Nobody's attacked me. It's not like people come in the streets trying to stab me in Canada or anything like that. I've been noticed in Canada a couple of times. Like, people recognize me, I mean, and people just ask me, "Oh, you have a channel, a YouTube channel?" I'm like, "Yes." And then they're like, "Okay, it's nice. I watch it." I'm like, "Okay, thank you." But for the most part, Muslims have been tolerant. The worst thing that ever happened to me so far was someone threatened to post my my private information online. There was a video we made which was called Surah Fa Qaf, which was, basically somebody else wrote it. It's a response to the challenge of the Quran. So somebody got very offended about that and said, if you don't take this down in 24 hours, we're gonna post where you work and a whole bunch of personal information, who your bosses or whatever, right? And I was very angry about that. So I went to the police and I filed a report and I did what I could, and I blocked this individual, and so nothing happened. But the thing is, to be honest, like, this is what happens when you, and actually I found out after the fact that somebody called my office and tried to get me fired for my job. So I have a full-time job, I have a life, I have a family, I have 5 kids, I have a wife. I pay for my bills and stuff. So what I'm doing on the side here has nothing to do with my job. I don't go at the office talking about this stuff. Like, it's my own, like, this is my own personal stuff I do in the evenings. Thankfully, my boss, they discussed it and they said that what my personal views, whatever personal views I hold, should not affect the work that I do. And so they did nothing about it. Right?
Was that? What year was that? Was it?
That happened this year. But
year?
It might have happened.
Okay.
Yeah. And it might have happened.
Very lucky to be in Canada, right? You're in Canada?
Yes.
You are lucky.
Absolutely.
I mean, I would have to say this is not the case in United Kingdom, and I think some part of United States as well.
What do you mean? What's not the case?
Things are severely polarized. I mean, I got pulled out of a train a few months back, and it's only because somebody in the train thought, I don't even have a beard, and I don't think I look like a traditional, Islam believing person, but somebody decided to call in, and then the whole train was halted, and police came in and kind of evicted me to check my bag, which obviously they only found some lunch I had. and obviously with the expense of thousands of people waiting in the train to go. And
what?
And I have a feeling that person had a really racial hatred of some sort against me. I don't know why they would do that. But when I asked the police, why you guys think that I should be in some sort of threat? And they said, we don't know what kind of people we should be targeting. Your video somehow got disconnected for a second.
Oh, no, I just turned it off for a second.
Okay, cool.
So I picked my nose. Just kidding.
I'm sure there should be freedom for picking your nose in front of people. I don't understand why we can't. So, I think that very nicely brings us to the second topic of our discussion. Although I'm aware that we have already discussed around say 40 minutes, including the problem that we have in the middle, technical problem. The issue between a person who is of atheistic nature or kind of non-believer and a relation with a theist person who believes in the afterlife and the God and the punishment and the rewards and everything. So especially there are so many types of relation. I mean, you just explained or described a relation with a friend who
Yeah.
are a believer and then realized that you're not a believer, and he decided to prioritize that mindset of
Yeah.
his own, that you are not somebody to be supported or helped. That means he took the friendship in the priority list down over after his religious belief. And I have seen that sort of behavior so many times, and in places where I don't think religion should come in place. For example, police in Bangladesh, their job is to protect people's life, not to check what they were writing about.
Yeah.
Even if somebody was writing about their own mind, it should come under freedom of speech, and that person, if that person is under threat, he should not be,
Exactly.
Sorry,
Absolutely.
I just read a comment by Beach Price. He said, Arif looks so peaceful. People are nuts panicking about him. I don't know any people who are panicking about me. I'm nobody. So going back, the relationship between atheist and theist in our context, I just wanted to bring it up when there is a commitment and romantic relationship involved. For example, between boyfriend, girlfriend, or boyfriend, boyfriend, or girlfriend, girlfriend, where one person is religious and the other person is non-religious. Obviously, I should not theoretically class the girlfriend, girlfriend, or boyfriend, boyfriend relations, because theoretically those relations by religion, they are already, outside of religion, because God of any nature should, does at this moment condone any kind of gay relationship. So we will keep them aside. So between a male and a female, when one of them is non-religious and one of them is religious, what sort of problems we have seen and we can see, and what can be done to actually make sure that the relation survives? And I know that some part of you have already kind of suffered because, and I have suffered as well. I can't disclose or divulge too much about my wife because she's a private person, and I think yours is the same. But without mentioning anybody's name, can we talk a little bit about the issues that people may face who, for example, like us, who have left religion and would still like to live a whole life with their loved ones?
Yeah.
What's your take on
So
that?
I would just as a disclaimer, just to step back for a second about what you said about gay marriage. I do believe that, a very literal, straightforward reading of the, Abrahamic faiths does forbid, homosexuality. But, many people do believe in God, and they don't consider any problem with gay marriage. Many Christian sects now are allowing it. Progressive Muslims are okay with it. Quranists actually reinterpret the story of Lut to say it was about rape, not about homosexuality, which I don't see how that's a viable interpretation. Nevertheless, in my personal relationship, with my wife, obviously I was the one that left Islam first, and she was a believer. And so what happened was we had to have discussions about it. I had to be very careful in the beginning, because what happens is when a person leaves Islam, either husband or wife, they kind of put the other person in a difficult situation, because because of the way the religion is defined, right? The religion defines, especially Orthodox Sunni Islam, maybe Shias and others as well, that you cannot be married to a non-Muslim. Now, the funny thing is, if she had left Islam and become Christian, it wouldn't be a problem. But because I'm the man and you cannot be married to a non-Muslim man, even if I was Christian, which I'm not, but even if I was, then she would have to leave me according to the Islamic law. Some scholars would say, well, you can give him 72 hours or 1 week or something to try to reconsider, but then your marriage becomes null and void, right? It's not very many Muslim scholars would consider a marriage between a Muslim and a non-Muslim man to be valid. So, my wife noticed that I was going through this, and so she was trying to help me, and she was with me throughout the whole process of going to the imam and talking to different imams, talking to my friends for hours on the phone. I talked to one of my friends who is a professor of Islam, in the US. Someone went to university with me. We went on and did further studies in Islam. And, I tried to get help on resolving my issues that I had, which at that point in time, I still felt like I had issues with the Quran, but I hadn't got to the point which I am now, where I don't see any reason to believe it in the first place. So my whole paradigm has shifted. But at that point, I had specific issues I had, and he wasn't able to solve that. And I even went to like a Sufi mosque, a Sufi imam. I had many people tell me, why don't you try, instead of Salafis, talk to Sufis? So I tried that as well, and the guy wasn't able to resolve my issues either. So, and I believe that because my wife saw all of this and she saw how sincere I was and how I was trying my very best, this wasn't just like an arrogance thing, or this was a sincere position that I changed. I think that she felt that it was okay to stay with me, and she wanted to still be part of my life. So we were able to resolve it, thankfully, because I feel maybe it would have been, I don't know if it would have been different if she was a born Muslim versus being a convert to Islam. So she converted to Islam as well. And so maybe, that was part of being open-minded and not being able to, not, because the other thing is, because her family is not Muslim, there's no pressure on her from her family, only from her friends, right? Her friends said, she should leave me and not be with me anymore. But her family, they're happy with me as a Muslim or not Muslim. They don't really care, right? Like, they're okay with me. So that part of the pressure wasn't there. But definitely someone that leaves Islam, they're put in a very difficult situation, whether it's a man or the woman, because what happens now is they're technically illegally married, right? And if they're in a Muslim country, they can be like, never mind the threats to their lives and the crazy things that can happen there, they can just at least lose their wife or lose their husband. I know many ex-Muslims told me that they didn't even tell their own spouse that they left Islam. They didn't talk to the kids even, right? In my case, I couldn't do that. I said I have to be myself. I have to be authentic, and I have to do what I have to show. I have to be myself. I can't hide this anymore, right? And so I just openly said that I don't believe. And so, thankfully our religion survived. Our relationship survived. Like I was discussing with my wife, and she was saying, well, even, sometimes there's a Shia and a Sunni that get married, and some people will be against that. And so, thankfully we were able to kind of resolve it, but it's not always the case like that. Many times a marriage completely dissolves. People cannot see outside of the worldview that this is not allowed for whatever reason, right? And so they'll consider it very black and white, and I have to just break up, right?
I just wanted to expand on my previous comment, is that it's there is obviously an issue of direct heartbreak. So, for example, if after some initial wild love between newly wed or newly fell in love couple, and then realizing that one of them is not of the same belief level, then having a heartbreak, and then say, oh, I don't think I can live with you because I have a issue with somebody who doesn't believe, then that's a direct breakup, and that's a direct impact of being an atheist. But there are other kind of subtle issues of life view, and the secondary kind of impacts of that. So let me try to explain what I'm trying to say here is, us atheists, obviously we don't believe in an afterlife, generally speaking, and we don't believe in the use or the invisible hand of God in everything, whereas a theist obviously have that mindset, and his or her whole life, internal superstructure has been based around the concept of a super deity, and then the concept of an afterlife, and then the reward or the punishment, and his or her actions every day, day on day, is guided and governed by those things. And I know that a lot of people may not realize this, but a devout Muslim or a devout believer would always, although both of us are from an ex-Muslim background, so we might talk about generally Muslim issues, but I think this applies to anybody who's actually believer or non-believer. Then their approach to life and different issues might be influenced by those kind of thought process. And I can't actually give an example, but I'm hoping that by giving you this kind of framework of thought, and the difference between them, because a believer obviously thinks those things, but a non-believer would not. A non-believer would think that this is the life, you need to enjoy this life, and this is all. But a believer would not bother about this life, generally speaking, and their actions are going to be more about what happens after life. And how can you, depending on which side you are, use or abuse or misuse this life to actually for the next life, and that destroys people's life, because and I think it impacts on a lot of different levels. For example, a non-believer person would be interested in enjoying their own life, kind of seeing things, and if they're a sexual person, they would be trying to get as much as possible. But a believer person have got a different view of romance or sex in their life, because to them they have been given instructions about what to do with sex or what to do with their body, and obviously a sin and non-sin way of looking at those things, and that destroys relationships. So I don't know, what do you think about the comments I made so far?
Yeah. So one of the things is that people don't necessarily realize just how much of a cost it comes to believe in Islam, any religion, but specifically Islam. It comes with a very heavy price. Every single thing, every single decision, every single thought process, everything is affected by this religious belief. So the type of choices you make as for career can be affected, what you do for a living, where you live, how you play, how you work, what you do for fun. Every single thing can be affected. Like, for example, like a Muslim woman may not be able to even swim in public. She might not feel comfortable. She might have this, this belief about haya and modesty, and so she can't wear a bathing suit. So she has to dress up in this like heavy burkini or whatever, right? And she may feel that she can't be, she can't wear perfume or whatever. Like, there's so many restrictions for one. As well, when your spouse is a religious believer, they're always getting, not only they're getting pressure from the friends and family, but they're also getting, internal pressure that, am I doing the right thing? There's this guilt that's applied on them. Am I going to go to hell? Am I going to, is this zina? Am I committing adultery by being with this person? As well, like you said, if they go to the mosque, they might want to go to the mosque and you might not go to the mosque. Or, some people have to fake, going to the mosque with their spouse. They have to pretend, and so these type of things can really affect your life. Thankfully, again, in my case, my wife is not as religious as she was before. And so we were able to make it work. We don't have those bottlenecks, and we can go out and we can have fun. And for my kids, someone was asking about my kids. We're going to teach them critical thinking, because I think that's the most valuable skill, and they can decide for themselves if they want to be a believer, don't want to be a believer. I have no problem with my kids being Muslim. It's totally up to them. Of course, I'll tell them I don't believe, and they know that, and they know why I don't believe. So I don't really see how they would end up as believers when clearly they saw that the transformation that happened in front of their eyes. Some of them are still young, so they don't really know. Some of them, they're like, they'll understand when they get older, right? They'll make their own decisions and whatever. Personally, I don't see that there's much of a kind of movement towards becoming as religious nowadays, because people are seeing religion for what it is. It was a crutch that helped us at some point in a history of humanity, but it's not necessarily something that we really need anymore, right? So I think, thankfully, that I personally don't think they'll be religious if they grow up. I don't know if they'll believe in God or not. That's kind of like a personal thing. It's not really an issue whether people believe in God. It's an issue about, the hidden costs or the overt costs of religion, right? So like you said, sometimes when people get together, there's so much love, and then later on in life, one of them may either leave the religion or they may not be religious anymore. And yet now what do you do? Like, how do you get along? And sometimes even political differences can break up people. So one person is conservative, the other person is liberal, and they get into fights. I think part of the challenge of relationships is to find a way to be tolerant with your spouse, to be able to let them hold the position they hold and you hold the position you hold. But again, I do think that
But
because of
there's a huge amount of sacrifice. So, for example, food is the
yeah,
biggest sacrifice. If you go to
yeah.
a restaurant and if you try to order some really nice gammon, you know, you can't.
What's gammon?
If
I don't know what that is.
pork,
Oh, okay,
certain part of pork salted, and
okay,
or if you try to have an English breakfast with some bacon,
yeah,
or if you try to invite people and have some, you know, pork butt to smoke in your barbecue, you
yeah,
can't. You have to be
yeah,
careful constantly about making sure that your other half, or not even other half, people who you have invited in your barbecue, or your I don't know, occasion.
yeah,
Food is a major issue. Also, if you go to a restaurant where there is, say, for example, a shareable platter,
yeah.
you can't order something that is, you think, very tasty, but there is stuff there that is, somebody from above has asked us not to touch.
Yeah,
Although there are debate that, is this actually, instructed in the right way? It's
yeah,
not. So, and this is only the tip of the iceberg of the issues that I personally, as an ex-Muslim or an atheist, face day to day while living with somebody who actually has belief. But my wife does not actually practice Islam,
okay,
but
hmm,
she has issues of obviously food related, and I think that came
right,
from cultural, from where how she was brought up, and she's not from a devout Muslim family either. I mean, none of my in-laws are actually extremely Muslim. They live in Bangladesh, so they have obviously this culture of
yeah,
Islam where, and also obviously in Bangladesh, the hatred against atheists comes through the mullahs who
yeah,
preach that you're supposed to actually not only hate an atheist, but also you're supposed to kill them wherever you find them, depending on the degree of extremism that each
yeah.
mullah can express. Because in Bangladesh, the laws preventing them from preaching hate speech is not there. Although there is
Oh,
laws against us talking about religion is there, because there is called sections 57, where there is this vague term: if somebody is seen to be hurting religious sentiment of people, then that person would be taken down really, really strongly. Although if, on the other hand, the mullahs have preached in front of thousands, millions of people in a really, really nasty way, and say,
yeah,
theoretically you're supposed to take people's head off, nobody's going to flinch. No
yeah,
police cases, because they are kind of used by the political system to control and contain people.
yeah,
And in that environment, when somebody grows up, it's really difficult for them to be humane and
right,
have any kind of respect for freedom of speech.
yeah,
Um, shall we answer a few questions? I mean, I can see that there are some questions.
sure.
I saw a few before. Um, um, there is a
Yeah.
question about towards me about people coming out uh, of the closet, proverbial closet in Bangladesh, and expressing themselves as an atheist. And I think I am not in a position to actually answer that question because it's difficult. Um, and there is also an interesting question from Ishmam Faisal. He asked, he's going to an ICNA event. I don't know what that is.
ICNA? Yeah, Islamic Society in North America. Uh-huh. I know what
Okay.
that is.
And he said he's going there tonight and we'll discuss Islam and atheism among youth. What
Oh,
should I ask them during Q&A? So he's asking for suggestions of questions. Uh, I'm assuming, because this person is watching our video, I'm assuming this person is of atheistic nature. So are you going to crash the party, or are you going to, I don't know what your intention is, because depending on your intentions, you can ask questions, but I'll leave it to Abdullah to kind of come up with some questions for
Ye-
Faisal.
Yeah. So the problem with these type of events is they've already like the narrative is not about like openly questioning Islam. The point of these events is to stifle. No, I don't know if I should say stifle questioning, but it's to fix the problem with youth, you know, abandoning the religion, right? And I think the fact that the people that Muslims are even having these events shows like how much of an impact that this kind of movement or this is happening, and people are actually leaving Islam among young people especially, and or questioning Islam and skeptical about Islam. So I'm not sure how I would frame the question. How would you what would be the purpose of your question? You could, if you wanted to kind of inspire doubt, if that was the what you wanted to do, you could ask specific questions about Islamic doctrine which are problematic, or you could excuse me, mention what should we do about, and then mention a couple of names of like popular ex-Muslims that are speaking, and you know, or what should we do about the ex-Muslims of North America? How should we engage with them? So people get, you know, kind of awareness of the existence of like EXMNA or you know, stuff like that. That's a couple of things you could do. Like I found that when I was going to Islamic classes, you can't really engage to that level when there's such a big audience to really, you know, engage with these questions, because it's kind of like they'll just kind of like vaguely answer and move on to the next question, and you don't really get that issue resolved, right? You could ask about, you know, science in the Quran, how many Muslim preachers now have abandoned that completely, such as Hamza Sotis. So what is the new narrative as to why we should believe in Islam, right? Like, or you could ask about the morality questions in the Quran, like, you know, why, you know, one of the common ones is about slavery, but I think the Muslim apologists have kind of beaten that response to death as to why Islam allowed, you know, slavery. They have a long explanation as it was better for humanity and this and that and so on and so forth. Yeah. Oh, okay. I know who's asking the question now. Yeah. So I guess it would be good to kind of ask questions that would raise awareness, right? It would raise awareness about problems in the Quran, about the ex-Muslim movement, about, you know, how Muslims have abandoned the scientific narrative now, and what the new narrative they're going by, about sticky questions about morality, as to like, you know, how can we say that this is a perfect book? Yeah, there's so many things you can kind of bring up, but just keep in mind that you should just really make people just kind of start questioning. Not really, you're not going to get anyone to like really leave Islam, but at least if you bring up some things they can think about, that'd be good.
Thank you. And I think two things I was thinking in my head is, first, I think I believe that if it's done properly, and if it is not quashed early, like it has already been in Bangladesh, the ex-Muslim movement or people who left Islam can be the real Islamic spring, you know, and the reforms movement in Islam, because Islam is stuck at this moment because of this 40-50 year long indoctrination from the Salafist, and they have hijacked. And although I don't really believe that Islam is a religion of peace and all this bullshit, but if it is done properly, like you are a living example, and you're not the only person who I know has been heavily Islamic but have left and became heavily atheistic. I actually know a mullah who is a hafiz, who used to be a principal in a madrasa. He used to be working for as a quite high up executive in a religious political party in Bangladesh, but he left all of these and became an ex-Muslim and an atheist. And he's now the kind of a figurehead of mullahs turned into an atheist. And I actually have multiple talks with him on my channel in Bengali, of course. Unfortunately, he is not that good in English, but he's learning quite rapidly, and he's a really good guy. His name also has half of it. I think a lot of Muslims have Abdullah. His name is Abdullah Mufti
Masood?
Abdullah Al Masood. Yeah. Do you know him?
Yes. He actually I briefly connected with him on Facebook, but again, because of the language barrier, we weren't able to communicate. But yes, I know about him as well.
So he's got few interviews, but unfortunately, I think Google or YouTube translation or subtitles don't really work that well. But hopefully I'll have an English with a discussion with him at some point. So that's one thing. Then the other thing, I kind of forgot now, but it will come back to me. So I can.
Someone's asking the question: how are you going to bring up your child?
I was actually going to get to that. So that's a question to me, and I think it's a no-brainer because I live in United Kingdom of the Queen, and like it or not, actually, majority of people in the UK has already turned atheist. It's a census, and it's actually a statistical data. It's not something that we are just promoting, because Humanist UK, which used to be called British Humanist before, have actually come up with a proper research paper showing and displaying that around 57% people have either shown that they're atheist, or they're saying that they don't have a religious affiliation anymore. So in a country like this, where religion is not actually directly peddled, it's really difficult for my son to become a Muslim unless I shove that down his throat. So luckily so far, I am not doing that. And I'm trying to carefully not interface with him to those sort of people whose first thing is to indoctrinate a child. So I don't do that. What I'm doing generally, like a bog standard father would do, showing him knowledge. I already bought him a few science things. He's only 4.5, not but he's intelligent, I think. Well, at least I would like to believe. And I take him to museums and let him ask questions, and I answer the questions. And that's what I think a father can do. Let him explore and ask the questions honestly about how things work, rather than, don't ask questions because it's God's will. Or, you have 5 kids, so I don't have to kind of tell you, but it's actually an answer to this person whose Bengali name is Shorbonam. In English, it's called pronoun. So I'm assuming this is a nom de plume. So there you go. That's my answer. So I definitely would try to save him from religious indoctrination if I can. And I think my wife is not hell-bent on making him a Muslim. I had a chat with her, and she's not into making him because she doesn't even wear a hijab. So she's from a good family, progressive family, not as progressive as I am, but so I think shoving down religion through somebody's throat is not in her either. But future is in future. We don't know what can happen. Suddenly, Saudi Arabia can become the nuclear superpower. Saudi Arabia can mandate everybody to become Muslim, mandatory. Saudi Arabia in 20 years' time can take over the world. We don't know. There are lots of things can happen. But from my point of view, at this point in time, that's where I stand. I can see there is another question. Interesting discussion. Mocha Musk is saying, Arif, how did your wife react to you become atheist? How is she feeling about this? Do you have kids? If so, how do you plan to raise them? I think, Mocha, you may have actually joined the discussion quite late, and we have already discussed a lot of these same things. So I would recommend, once this video finishes, if you can go back to the beginning, the video should stay in the YouTube unless somebody reports it and takes it off. We touched upon a lot of these things. But quickly going back to the wife reacting to becoming atheist, I did not turn atheist after I got married. I was already an atheist. And yes, at that time, I did not explain to her that I'm an atheist because I did not realize, because that was way back, at least a decade ago, that things were not that worse then. So explaining myself to become am I an atheist or not, it was not a big issue at that time. So, but later on, she saw what I am, and she did not have a hissy fit. She originally wanted to go to Umrah, do the religious thing, but I don't think she's that much interested about that anymore. So that's my answer.
I think you made a very good point, which I just wanted to kind of add to, which was, it's not the natural state that people would become Muslim. It's the people do convert to Islam sometimes. And I feel like the reason it happens is because they haven't seen both sides. They haven't been very critical, and they haven't looked at, for example, the problems in the Quran, for example, right? Like me, for example, I just read the Quran. Hey, this is great. I want to become Muslim, and I already had this pre-existing belief in God. I already had this pre-existing kind of belief in prophets. You know, being an Ismaili, you still believe in Prophet Muhammad and this and that. So I was like, yeah, this sounds kind of cool. Now I can just kind of be, because Ismailism is kind of, it feels like a watered down version of Islam where you don't really do much and you don't really have much guidelines, right? It's all what Aga Khan says. So then when I read the Quran, I'm like, hey, this is more detailed, the hadith and all that stuff. But the thing is, for the most part, it's not like, you know, people just, you know, most people would not become Muslim just like that, because there's a lot of problems in Islam. There's a lot of questions. And so what happens is we kind of indoctrinate our children at a very young age to be scared of hell. This hell's going to come. Hell's going to come. You're going to go to hell. And hell is a kind of, you know, some people like Richard Dawkins would say that it's a kind of child abuse. And so basically what you're doing is you're scaring a child at a very young age to believe in this thing. And then it becomes very difficult to let go of this belief no matter what happens in future. And even though you have doubts and you have your doubt is your mind telling you that something is...
It's called conditioning,
yeah,
I think.
Yeah, and your mind is telling you when you have a doubt that something is wrong here. Something is not adding up. There's a problem. So listen to your doubts, you know, investigate your doubts. But the problem is this conditioning can kind of overwhelm the rational process of thinking. And so even, you know, people that leave Islam, sometimes they still believe in hell and they're still scared of hell. Or not just Islam, even Christianity. Many people, they have nightmares. They wake up and they're scared that now that they don't accept Jesus, they're going to go to hell, right? And so it's very difficult for some people to overcome. You know what I'm saying? And there's a question about what would you do if your son becomes Muslim? For me, as I already mentioned, I have...
Before we get to that, I was just wanted to kind of have a supplementary comment on that. Mm-hmm. And although earlier in my comments, I portrayed a really bleak future, possible bleak future of Saudi Arabia taking over. But if we do the complete opposite of it, and in 20 years' time, if humanity progresses so far that this child abuse becomes a criminal offense, and you know, indoctrinating somebody before their mental faculties are strong enough becomes a criminal offense. I hope that will happen, because at this moment religion has done so much damage to so many people's life. It's mind-boggling, and I have a feeling that religion actually helps creating criminals, because if you look at some of the Scandinavian countries where they are actually known as atheist countries, although I don't understand a Muslim country or an atheist country, but going by the demography and the ratio, they have less, you know, criminals, and they're shutting down a lot of their penitentiary or jails, basically.
Yeah.
Because people, if they believe in their own morality, they become actually better people than people who are religious and they fear a supernatural deity, thereby they don't commit any crimes. So I'm hoping that future will be good for us, and then you know, our sons will actually have sons who would not be afraid of this sort of indoctrination. Sorry, you were gonna talk about the child.
Yeah. Well, okay, no, you said something more interesting that I want to talk about now. Please. I'm not sure how I feel about that, because I'm completely against any sort of thought control or policing thought. I know that China, in order to put down the minorities, the Uyghurs, I don't know how to pronounce it, the kind of Turkish Chinese people they have that are mainly Muslim, they put all sort of ludicrous laws on them, like they can't fast, they're forced to eat in Ramadan, they have to shave their beards, they have to dance, all sorts of weirdo, crazy things, you know, which is religious oppression that they're doing on the minorities. I don't know if I agree with the idea of
I was showing the example of Scandinavian countries where none of these things happen.
Okay, so I agree with you
China
that
is a very bad example.
Yeah, but I agree with you that secularism. There's a very great Psychology Today article about, it's called Myths About Secularism and Religion, where they clearly show that more secular countries that have less religious people actually tend to be happier. They tend to be doing better. They have less crime. Strangely, what people would say, wow, that's strange. They have less crime, right? And it seems counterintuitive to many believers. So that I do agree with you that without religion, I feel like the world might be a better place. The thing is, my belief about freedom of speech and freedom of expression, and not becoming a kind of fascist regime, I would be hesitant to kind of make anything illegal when it comes to like parents teaching their children stuff like that, because I feel like, all parents want to do what's best for their kids. So they're actually trying to protect their kids. And I see them more like victims. They're victims of a nasty ideology that's told them that if you don't teach your children this, they will end up being burned by this monster. So I see, this God as a kind of monster that wants to hurt people, and these guys are slaves to this monster. So we have to help these people to become free of this monster. But I do feel like it could be counterproductive to have such laws making it illegal to teach children about religion and people's religious beliefs. It could be very counterproductive, because what might end up happening is you might end up with
No,
another kind of.
hang on. I think maybe I was not clear. Or what I was saying is, teaching religion is one thing, but as you correctly said, making a child be so fearful of hell that they have nightmares after, long time, that is different thing. And
Yeah.
a child should be protected from that. Although teaching
Yeah.
religion may claim that this is part of their religion, like in Islam these days, in especially in the West, they say, oh, calling for a kufr or an atheist's or an ex-Muslim's head is practicing my religion, and some people accept that. But I think there is an issue there, and that should improve. Although you
What
would,
about, yeah, like let's say someone said, if you go out after dark, there's like, this boogeyman that'll get you, like, kind of like the movie It, like there's a clown that's under in the sewers that like
yeah,
grabs
yeah,
kids
I
and
know what
eats
you
them, right?
did
So some.
last summer or something like that.
So sometimes parents do scare their kids. They say things like, "Oh, don't go out after dark." Sometimes parents will be honest and they'll say there's like, sexual predators that will, take you and
Which
this
are
and that. And
real.
sometimes they,
Which are
yeah,
real.
that's which is real. But sometimes they'll make up stories too, and
Hmm.
they'll try to scare the kids. So I don't know. Like I'm against any sort of, I guess in a sense I'm a little bit of a libertarian when it comes to things like that. I prefer to let people do what they do and to try to educate people out of it rather than making laws against it, because I feel like, making it comes back to like, even should we ban the Quran, because the Quran is full of hate speech against non-Muslims, right? Like I'm against banning the Quran because I feel like that would be counterproductive. That would lead
But
to
then
people
again,
just
there are
making
so
the.
many books out there which are full of, for a lack of a better word, shit. So we can't ban all the books. I mean, banning a book
Yeah,
is not, that goes into a different territory of discussion. But
right.
I think we try to explain what we try to explain. But you're right. This is a discussion that gets a bit more academic and a
Yeah,
bit more
yeah.
technical. Um, we have to be aware of where we are at this moment and what sort of bubble. I mean, we can always talk about semantics and go way far ahead where the left and some of the academia has already gone far, which is very good because that's what their job. But um, uh, our discussion was kind of very broad, and I didn't want it to make it more technical because I think these are evolutionary steps that we have to take as atheists or ex-Muslims, because if we go too far too quickly, then the people who still needs those broad steps first and then become technical, they would get lost very easily. And I think the left, this is a whole topic discussion that we should actually address in a different um, uh, episode, where I think we can actually invite few more people about
Hmm.
what the left has done
Hmm.
these days. I'm not talking about, I am actually a left-leaning person,
Hmm.
believe me or
Yeah,
not.
me too. Yeah.
I was not like this, but then I realized in this really shitty world at this moment, among all the different powerhouses, the left have at least got some humanity left in them. The rest, debatable. So, but still, the left going too much academic, they sometimes drop the ball, and they sometimes allow the extremists to infiltrate, and the extremists are really good infiltrating, and that's a really good thing that the Muslims and also we should be aware of. Should we talk about this ex-Muslim business, because that was last in our agenda, but I think we already touched upon that. Do you think we should?
Well, like I think I've already said it's.
Yeah, you did.
I see the point. I see the point for the label, and I think eventually all labels, even like atheists, won't become necessary. Like many prominent atheists say, we don't go saying we're a Taoist or we're a Krishnaist or we're like there's a million things we're not, right? And we don't say I'm a tooth fairyist. I don't believe in tooth fairies, right? So I think the point of these labels as time goes by and will become less and less important. At the moment, I still see the need for the ex-Muslim label, but I personally just don't want to be kind of like put in that bubble only. And so I'm just personally I'm not making it like a prominent part of my kind of online platform, but I still am ex-Muslim and I support people that want to use that label. But at the same time, sometimes it's almost better not to use it, because I've noticed that when you don't put that on your label, people actually are more likely to think about what you're saying rather than right off the bat just classifying you as, oh, he's ex-Muslim, I don't want to listen to him. So people have actually, when I comment on Facebook now for the first time, they actually wonder, like,
can I quickly interfere there? You're talking about the people. When you say quote unquote people, you're talking about your target audience, and that target audience, some of them may still be the believer, right?
Absolutely.
Because you can have target audience or a broader audience who are actually may not have anything to do with Islam, but still want to listen to you. So there is a mix, but depending on who you want to actually target. For example, for me, I target mostly Bangladeshi, Bengali speaking people, but my target is not the Muslim people. My target is actually fellow atheists, and especially young atheists, because that's what I have always been trying to do, to groom young atheists, young secularists, to give them the faculties so that they can do the fight. Kind of.
You know what? That's part of where I'm going with this whole thing, right? Of not using the ex-Muslim label. Yeah. I just want to be like a more of a general type of personality that's not only about Islam, right? And unfortunately, like that's one of the topics I'm good at. Like I know this very well because I was very religious for such a long time. So it's easy for me to talk about Islam, but I don't want that to be the end of everything. And I agree with you that we should actually be role models. And that's a very good point. Like I'm also trying to be a role model for people that when they leave Islam, they don't really know where to, and it's very confusing. Like, where do I stand on these issues? So to be that role model that can be there and to show people that this is how we dialogue with other Muslims, this is how we dialogue with others, this is the type of respectful tone you should have. I believe that mocking has its kind of position, has its benefits, let's say. But I don't jump to mocking, and because I feel like most of the time it's very detrimental and it's too overused in the atheist community. Mocking is typically the first line of attack, and it just turns off people. And I feel like I've kind of carved a niche for myself by having this sort of respectful dialogue where I've reached a lot of people that feel that I'm not there just to make fun or just to get an ego boost of like laughing at how dumb Muslims are.
Progress always is a teamwork. It's not a single person. So in a team, you will have people who are, as you said, like Dusty,
Yeah.
Dusty. And then you know who I'm talking about, right? Dusty, Cult of Dusty. So.
Oh no, I don't know.
So he's an atheist, and he, very beginning, at the 10 years ago, he used to swear the shit out of his videos. But I used to get really amused by watching his videos because he used to make really solid points, and he still does, but it was full of, as you said, mocking. And
are you talking about Mufassil?
No. Cult of Dusty is an ex-Christian atheist, white person, I think from Texas or somewhere. I'll send you the link later on. I'm sure you would find his original videos really funny. But going back to the comment you made about people are becoming a role model. One thing I always try to do, and I think it's very important that we do, is the young people, the moment they realize that there is something off, and we are helping them to arm them their own selves to become, come to the dark side. The moment they do that, even if it is semi-public, or even if they would become target of continuous repair activity, for lack of a better word, because the machinery that the machinery I'm talking about, the Islamist machinery, the machinery that keeps people's brain washed,
the
machinery have exactly that machinery then targets and changes its tack for a recently converted ex-Muslim to bring him back, because that gives them extra brownie points to their own peers. That means that person, the moment he becomes an ex-Muslim, that young ex-Muslim or an atheist now, he needs to be not only having a very solid understanding of why he became an atheist, but also he should have the defense mechanism. He should have the armory to fight against those targeted attacks in his psychology. Because although earlier I said I don't like this person Jordan B. Peterson, but one of his this is what he does really good. He mixes good stuff with some really shitty stuff, and that's one of the reasons I don't like him, because he knowingly mixes the really shitty stuff. But the good stuff that he uses is sorry, it's not actually from Jordan B. Peterson. I should not give him any credit for this. This is a discussion I heard listening to Sam Harris's Waking Up podcast, the latest episode, when he was talking with a white supremacist turned humanist. And in that section, he talked about a very interesting analogy. He's talked about these potholes. People, especially young people who turns white supremacist, did not have good prospect in their young life. And suddenly when they walk through their life, they fall into potholes, and then they'll get lost. And then the white supremacist machinery picks them up. And I think the same analogy can be used for Islamists as well, especially the extremist and violent extremist.
I don't.
Yeah, I mean, if we can help them overcome those potholes, or try to give them the mental faculty to, overcome and progress with strength, then that, I think, would be the best help we can give them.
Yeah, I don't want to limit this world Dawah machine only to Islamists, because it's actually the general Islamic community that's doing this, not just Islamists. So we have a lot of Muslims that just believe in Islam that will continue to press Islam, even non-Islamists, even like moderate Muslims. I'm constantly engaging with a so-called moderate Muslim on Islam on my Facebook, that he's constantly posting about you guys, we have to save these atheists from hell. And you're right, by the way, that I know a few ex-Muslims that became Muslim again. And you wonder, like, how is it that someone that was able to see the way through Islam ended up becoming a Muslim again? And you're right that, it all depends why you left Islam in the first place and for what reason, and how you're understanding the world. I cannot imagine how would I ever become Muslim again. I can't. Like, I just don't see how it's possible. There's so many problems with the Islamic worldview.
Well, except when Saudi Arabia becomes the world leader and mandates everybody to mandatory Islamic,
That's like on the surface Muslim, but not really believing in Islam. Yeah, sorry. What I mean is, I don't know how I could believe in Islam, because unless I took a very perennialist kind of perspective where I believe in some sort of greater truth that exists, and I don't take the books at the literal value, and some sort of very, very different Islam that nobody would even probably accept that I'm a Muslim anymore if I did that. But yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from. That's a very good point, that we don't need to support people that are leaving the religion, because it's a very difficult thing to do. The tendrils are so deep in people's psyche that even when they leave Islam, they constantly question themselves. Did I make the right decision?
We can use here is when, for example, in a house construction, if you have any understanding of engineering, there are walls that are load-bearing walls. And when you're doing renovation, your engineer or your architect should be aware of which walls are the load-bearing walls.
Yes, yes.
Religion is the load-bearing walls for some people. That means the moment you ask them to get rid of those, that means they should be replaced by equally strong load-bearing, because the load of life is really hard, and you can't just replace them with wishy-washy, fluffy stuff about humanity and other people. These are solid stuff that people have to, reason within themselves to actually go through this conversion. And I don't know if there has been enough work done to not only to come up with the superstructure replacing the religious superstructure, but also to make this colloquial, as in to make this a narrative for ex-Muslims to adhere to. Then obviously we run the risk of making it a whole religion altogether. But I think I've explained what I was trying to. So I think we've discussed for almost 1 hour 40 minutes, and I think the audience have been really good. I can see there is a really fiery discussion going on here, not in a bad sense, really engaged discussion. And I would like to take this opportunity to kind of wrap it up, unless you have any final words, and we could call it a day.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think we've covered all the material that needs to be covered. I don't have anything else to add.
Thank you. I just wanted to add a quick note here in terms of the comment about ex-Muslim. And I think, although I class myself as an atheist because, I'm a human being. So, and as an activist, I'm an atheist activist, but also I'm an ex-Muslim. The reason I personally don't always stick with the ex-Muslim boundary, because I have seen a lot of Christians get fooled. A lot of Hindus get fooled because they think, because they're religious and they expect people to be religious. The moment I say I'm an ex-Muslim, they think, oh, you have converted to us. Welcome, welcome. And that's a false position for me and for them as well. And also for Hindus, because especially in Bangladesh context, there is this historic garbage between Hinduism and Islamism and all these things. And the moment I say I'm an ex-Muslim, they expect me to be pro-Hindu or pro-Christian or pro-other religion. But the moment I say I'm an atheist, then it kind of puts me into outside of any religious boundary. And that's one of the things. But unfortunately, in the West, actually, fortunately in the West, I have seen a lot of our colleagues, especially, for example, likes of Majid Nawaz, Mariam Namazi, and also I mentioned the secular jihadist guys. Everybody's doing a tremendous great job. And me trying or you trying to say that we don't identify as ex-Muslim is not in any way doing any negative PR against them. Definitely not. I do have severe, extreme respect for all these guys, and definitely won't do anything to say otherwise. But it's just I think at some point, because they do that as a part of a moderation movement, and I think they're doing some seriously good work there, and I would hope to work really with them in future as well. And I had Armin Nawawi so many times in my show now. I also had Ali Rizvi in my show. I also had Faisal Al-Muttar. One person I haven't had in my show yet, Yasmin. I hope. I don't have really much direct communication with her. And this problem of Facebook banning me causes me so much trouble communicating. And I think, the people who are banning me knows that, and they want to disrupt what we are trying to do. And I think they do that because they know that we are doing something really important here, and they're afraid of us. So, if anybody is listening to this who are of extremist Muslims or they're trying to stop us, you guys know that we know that you are afraid of us. So that on that note, I would hope that everyone have a good life. Regardless of if you're Muslim or ex-Muslim, have a good life, have a reasonable life, have love people, and loving me as well. Share this video and subscribe to this channel. I also have link to Abdullah Sameer's channel. Go and watch his videos and subscribe to him. He's trying to do some really important stuff, as he explained and as you explained. So thank you so much for listening and staying with us. And this video will remain in YouTube. If you can share it, that would be great. If you can't, that's also great. The usual marketing blurb that we have to do, because these days you have to talk about these things. So thank you so much again. And from me, Arif Rahman from London, and from Abdullah Sameer from Canada.
Yes.
We wish you a very good evening, morning, wherever you are. And we'll catch you up in another time. Goodbye.